What if I told you that the human beings and the different human races that we reincarnate into, unbeknownst to our knowledge, but it's somewhere in the DNA or whatever, the genetic race that we're reincarnating to that is aligning with a certain sect of a spiritual organization, those two different things being different, but they could be one and the same. That is the spiritual stock. These are like the spiritual stocks, and how we're on a different pre-incarnational level. We're putting our our eggs in the basket on how we're kind of like resonating and having different dreamtime actions to have a alignment of an incarnation. And we have a micro choice of that because on a different, underlying mechanical level, we're going to be led to where we're going to be led based on all the different dreamtime actions and causes and effects and repercussions we're ultimately taking. So what if I told you the human beings and the genetic races and the genetic materials and the genetic, the diversified genetic, you know, um, streams of a human race we could go into, that is the spiritual stock. We are this, like the human beings, they are the spiritual stock, and they are like, in different magnitudes, they are the currency as well. So I'm just saying it casually, and I say it because I also bring up an important point, because it's not necessarily like we're not just made up of our own genetic race. There's nuances of how we're a genetic race, and we're like kind of like we have like kind of something of like a laid out destiny path in the organization. As we grow our taste, our spiritual taste and our human taste, it changes, and we resonate towards a certain path of a quote unquote religion, end quote. So that's why it's like, and those things, those organizations and those races, it's not that any one, quote unquote, like higher self or deity owns just one race or just one organization. No, they all have different shares, and how there is already a pre-arranged notion of collaboration and teamwork on how each of the races were already had a unique pre-collaboration, and how they grew in a certain geography temperament of a terrain, and the different deities had more significant leverage than the other. So it's not that like one deity is like the overruler of just one race or even one organization. No, it's a shared mix. But if we're but like that doesn't go to say that it could be prominent, that doesn't go to say that there's a race that could be like their original non-blemished race, quote unquote, end quote. That doesn't go to say that it could be prominent towards a certain deity, or an organization can't be prominent towards a certain deity. It's a paradoxically kind of both, but it's also a different type of spiritual differentiation, like not just the human differentiation. This is like a Godhead differentiation, and the Godhead differentiation is how one human race could have an acclamation of prominence towards one deity, but not necessarily so, because there's a different collaboration that's influencing that race on a different default standard level. Because how the human is made, different energy forces need to like inhabit a certain field of a chakra to hold down that energy station, for the human being to have a different type of resonance calibration, for it to function and have a different quote unquote radio signal for their chakras to even function to begin with. Like the root chakra, it's like that could be like in the Hindu lore, and you take this for a grain of salt neutrally. There's like 5 deities in the root chakra. There's Brahma's there, Indra's there, Ganesha's there, Shiva's there, and I think one of the Devis is there. But that's just one of their forms, based on that's just one that could be looked at as a surface level form, and they could have prominence in everything else, but more or less significance based on how they choose to establish their prominence per whatever chakra or dimension they're in. But take it with a grain of salt, because obviously, you know, who's to really say that the Hindu chakra system is updated? You know what I'm saying? Because we could study like the ancient Hindu texts, and it's not just, you know, the whole like Sanatana Dharma. It's not just, you know, it's a vast, diverse, rich culture. It's not just one deity. It's trying to hint to like what the deity's operation functions are. So within the deity's operating functions, and I'm just saying this standardly and neutrally because this is what it is on the background. I'm unbiased and I'm detached in a certain like nuanced way where I'm just kind of transmitting what's going through us, and I'm trying to establish the updated relationship with, you know, these, you know, different types of forces and energies on a standard level, because in the end, beyond the human mind, that's all that's really going to matter, because they're, you know, the preordainers to how their spiritual infrastructures are ultimately upheld, the material reality being a reflection of those spiritual infrastructures, and we're under their jurisdiction and regulations. And I've been talking about this for the longest time ever. So that being a casual example of that, and I just went on like a long walk, but that detail wasn't necessarily necessary. But what I'm saying here is like, because like the evidence could point to like one race before it's blemished. And what I mean by before it's blemished, not bad, not good. The blemishing being a particular type of starting point of where the genetic, you know, human race was like at its like standard base form. And from that standard base form, then, you know, the 4 root races, for example, and who's to say that's accurate, but whether that's accurate or not, that's where like there's a certain initial starting point of a particular type of human differentiation. So within that human differentiation, the pre-incarnation pre-resonance of the spirit somehow gets maneuvered and kind of processed to what kind of human they're going to be. Because it's like not one race is just like that type of race. We're all something of a mix. So for us to lean towards just one race, that's already something of an ignorance, because we're all like, we're whether you're more so of a mutt or not so of a mutt on a human level, you still have background different spiritual incarnations that will eventually be proven. And from those background incarnations, you're more so even be proven to not be the human race that you are. So if you use the human race, like I'm this race and I'm this race and my race is better, that's ignorance. And you're using that as like a leverage just to like kind of feel in a certain type of insecurity based on you probably wanting some type of like unconscious to subconscious control. You have some type of control issues, and that's just putting it for what it is. Because any race that you are right now, you could have been a totally different race and not just human, and that's pretty standard. So, and then there's a blend. So there's like a dual function from the deities. They're kind of like overseeing, you know, the genetic races that they're having their unique blends with, and then the quote unquote the organizations that you humans would call religions, but before the religion, it was an organization. And within the organization, within the man needing to conceive it within the experiment, it was influenced and provoked to create something of a religion for whatever communication it has with whatever particular deity it has from the original standpoint. And from that original standpoint across time, a different type of context of spiritual differentiation happened. How even the quote unquote the celestial body Godhead deities, they have their own unique, let me plug in my phone real quick. They have their own unique spiritual differentiation. We're just not aware of that. So this is like the spiritual differentiation of the Godheads respectively. And so that's how, so we're going into a certain type of spiritual diversity. We're going into a particular context of spiritual differentiation, having relationships with the deities on an unknown to known level, and seeing their function respectively, and seeing how things are transforming respectively, more or less though. So within that, we could neutralize the biases that we have with that. It's not that like they're all serving their purpose and their function per the terrain before, you know, the detrimental duality of the perception of how man has been influenced, the detrimental influence of the human how it's been influenced, because before that influence, the deity, the original Godhead deities, they're holding some type of original functionality per their terrain, and they're also overseeing something of, what do you call that, a certain type of gene pool. But like, so it's kind of like a percentage level thing. It's like, so take for example, just take for example any race. So within any race, that race could be ultimately like subscribed to one deity, more or less though. And it's more or less because one deity is overseeing a certain gene pool, and the spirits that are attracted to that gene pool, they could be attracted to that based on that's what they want to experience or resonate with, or they were born through that on original spiritual level. So I'm going to keep this sweet and short and sweet or whatever, because 11:11 right there, because I just wanted to say that casual chime, and like, and you use this information how you will. I mean, you like maybe the experiment is, can you like do something productive and graceful with it? Because in the end of it all, like, we have the opportunity to recognize the grace that has been given to us, and not to have pre-assumptions, because obviously, like, we're kind of precautioning ourselves to who's quote unquote in charge, end quote, who's the boss. We don't want to offend them, but we don't necessarily see all the grace from like the balanced Godhead deities that they're giving us, because they're giving you guys clues on how to fucking behave respectively. And I'm saying that neutrally, because obviously, like, you're going to want to, if you're trying to like sustain a job at a company, any company, whatever, Google, for example, you're going to not want to fuck that job up. So since you're not going to want to fuck that job up, you're going to like, there's going to be some part in your brain and your spirit and your soul that you're going to have to know to like, be in some type of behavior. So within that behavior, the behavior is being met halfway with you by all the grace and all like the clues that have been given to you. So you could actually like tap into a different type of balance. So you could see the leniency that has been given to you, but still, like, at the same time, there's like a certain type of no tolerance within the job that you're trying to ultimately receive and retain and like try to like fill, like there's policy, like if you like you work at quote unquote Google, end quote, you're gonna have to uphold their policies and regulations, and if you don't, you're not gonna work there. So it's like that could be likened to like a different type of spirituality based on how we're having the chance to mature through all of this shit or not. Whew. So like we're kind of like spiritual stocks, because like on a different duality page, we could be seeing the fragments and the polarizations of some of the deities, and within some of the deities, we're treating it like an imbalanced game of like one god is better than the other and my race is better than the other, when that's just confusion. Because but not necessary, but it's still like objective to your like fragmented subjectivity, and it's not necessarily confusion in your smaller picture, because that's still a reality for a group mind that has created a certain type, is establishing a certain type of like casual standard psychology for what works with them, which is polarization and some type of fragmentation. So within that, people could be like going towards a per the pre-incarnation and the pre-resonance, people could be like going towards a certain race because they think they think that spiritual stock is like more in favor than another, when in reality, like, the best thing we could do is just have like a balanced relationship with all of the stockholders, so we don't have to like see the detrimental game of the spiritual stocks, and we can see the constructive game of the spiritual stocks. So within that being said, what do you call that? So within that being said, because like obviously, like the empathy is not necessarily just human emotion or a human instinct. It's also some type of like foreseeance of intelligence, because like some people, like we are where we're at because like somehow we need to develop particularly our intelligence, and if that influence for that intelligence isn't grown, then it won't necessarily be cultivated. So if it's not cultivated and we're seeing like what could go wrong rather than what could go constructive, then that's just where our level of intelligence is, and the luck of our draw is. Because honestly, we have to count the blessings as well, because if we don't count the blessings, then we're just kind of like shortchanging ourselves for like how we could be fulfilled in the moment. And if you don't want to be fulfilled in the moment, then that's just where your shit's at, that's where your luck of the draw is at, that's where your lack of emotional intelligence is at. And for fuck's sakes, I mean, what else do you like really want, like what else, like you could only like receive so much that you're able to handle. So within like this, so it doesn't necessarily have to be, and like, this is like mature neutrality, because obviously I could see how someone could have like, hear this, have their detrimental chaos mind, think all this shit. Oh, this guy think he's slick. This guy think he know what's up. This guy thinks he's this, that, and yada, yada, yada. Like, dude, that thought trend is so fucking obsolete, so fucking outdated. Fucking may God send you back to fucking kindergarten. Like, straight the fuck up. But anyways, that's just some fucking real intelligence. But anyways, but being more mature and like, like what I do on my own, like shit, and how I show up to the groups, like we're always being like assessed and watched on a standard way. So it's like, it's about being like, it's about just like, it's just about being truthful, actually, like saying the truth of what really happened in the group dynamic. Because when you're in a group dynamic, as opposed to when you're by yourself, you're two different people. So when you're those two different people, you're going to act and behave differently, respectively. And when you act and behave differently, there's different spiritual jurisdictions that like see what will fly and what won't fly in the group dynamic. And I understand that aside from the group dynamic, aside from the the solitude dynamic, I get that there's this like freeway highway of just like, the fucking hood shit and the slums and shit, like that's just a circuit, that's just a circuit that we could like possibly, for whatever reason, just try to like interact with for various different reasons. And I'm not like capping any of that shit. I'm just saying there's different dynamics that we find ourselves in. And when we find ourselves in, may we act in like some type of, pocket. May we know why we're there, may we know why the fuck we're doing what we're fucking doing. But I'm gonna keep that short and sweet. Balance to you, obviously, and yeah. So the title of this video is the spiritual differentiation of the Godheads and spiritual stock and the spiritual stock market. But it's like, may you like one more key code, I guess you could say, is when you're in the real professional life arena and you're in the group dynamic, may you pass, possibly. May you actually like realize the fucking intelligence and how you have to show up in that part of the world, respectively, no matter like where you're coming from. You're still going to have to interact with that part of the world, no matter like how hard you are, because that's life. And life will fucking do what it does to behind life, behind the professional realm. That spiritual original secret life will do what it does to always uphold all of the shit, all that shit, the fucking professional arena, in between the professional arena to your solo arena. So have the best life ever.